Let's talk.
Giles Brown.
Master of Lies. How Anthony Blunt's treachery changed our world has been described as utterly shocking. Blunt wasn't just an arch traitor, he was a callous mass murderer. This intelligent history is how it should be written. Rigorous, unsettling, and startlingly reasonable. All of which could be said about my next guest, author of Master of Lies. Piers Blofeld. Piers, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for that introduction.
It's quite all right. So are you sitting somewhere near Cheltenham, GHQ, sort of monitoring screens and radar and moving things across?
Sadly not. No. I'm in chilly Norfolk.
Fair enough. Explain to us a little about those who don't know you, why you're so eminently qualified to write Master of Lies.
Well, I suppose it comes from the fact that I'm a literary agent, and I'd worked on a book with a client of mine that he'd written about a famous Operation Market Garden, which was the attack on Arnhem, the bridge too far in the Second World War.
Yeah.
And he was writing a book about a Dutch resistance fighter who had portrayed it. And I joked with him while he was writing this that there was going to be a Cambridge spy who was going to pop up in this book, inevitably.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, Anthony Blunt popped up in a way that threatened to derail the whole book. So we had to roll up our sleeves and work together to get the book back on track, and that opened the door for me to think. I caught the bug at that point, basically. I became fascinated and realised that after a lifetime of working on other people's books, it was time I wrote one of my own.
Fair enough, and gosh, that must have been an eye-opener, Piers, to put it mildly. I mean, all those emails you sent saying, "Where's your bleeding copy?" And now here you are thinking,
absolutely.
"Oh, finally, talk about poacher came to the gatekeeper." It's of all the Cambridge spies of the Cambridge Five, Sir, as he was, Anthony Blunt. I mean, he's the one that got away with it. And it's just quite mind-boggling, isn't it? I mean, I remember being a small boy, and you probably were as well, when this revolution came to light, and he was the Queen's, wasn't he the Queen's art historian or the Queen's art advisor?
Surveyor of the Queen's Pictures, it's called. Yeah.
Surveyor of the Queen's Pictures. I mean,
yeah,
really.
Yeah, no, he lived the life of Riley. I mean, he absolutely, he went from huge country house to huge country house to villas in the Mediterranean. He had innumerous numbers of rich friends and spent his life looking at art, advising on art. He sat on an incredible number of committees. He was the ultimate establishment man, and thoroughly enjoyed his life, but he was a mass murderer, and in a way that he was always held to be. What the official story is, even when Thatcher outed him in 1979, is that he'd only spy for the Russians when they were our allies, and he'd given them secrets about the Nazis. So really all he was doing was helping our allies kill Nazis, and there's nothing wrong with that, particularly. It's a bit naughty, but, it was fair enough. Actually, what he was really doing was passing secrets to the Nazis in order to help Stalin dominate Eastern Europe and get as far west as possible at the end of the war.
Because this is the thing. I mean, it seems to be. It's almost like when financial people say, "Oh, well, it's a victimless crime," and the people who get bumped off are because we imagine spies in our pop culture reference to be these sort of James Bond types, and a blowpipe dart to the back of the neck or something like that in a very sort of action hero. So, the harsh reality isn't this. I mean, what Blunt does here is it leads to direct deaths and, as you said, millions of them, and ordinary people. It's not these suave martini drinking Ian Fleming types.
Absolutely. Breaking into the enemy's compound and stealing the plans to Project X is a fun idea, but it isn't how it works. And what he was really doing was fooling. He was manipulating the people around him into thinking the false things. And for the last 2 years of the war, he was writing Churchill's security briefings, and his intelligence was also going directly onto the desks of Hitler and Stalin. He was whispering in the ears of the three most powerful men three of the four most powerful men on the planet. It's an unbelievable thing to be doing.
Is it a situation where the establishment closed ranks? They thought, well, he's one of ours, he couldn't be one of these. I mean, the Cambridge Five, to begin with, are driven by this narcissistic sort of, you call it these days, possibly, sort of desire that they are, they have these ideas, the Soviet Union is pretty much a utopia. They're doing it because, they're against the system, etc. The harsh realities show that it's somewhat different. Is Blunt working off some sort of high ideal? Is he just working it for personal gain? Is it to flatter his own sort of ego that he manages to sort of keep quiet? I mean, why is he
I think he loved power. I think he loved the feeling of a sense of influence, and I think he was protected partly because, if it had come out just after the war that 16,000 Allied soldiers died at Operation Market Garden, if it had come out that many of them American, if he'd come out that he'd been responsible for the deaths of tens of thousands of American soldiers, that would have put NATO at risk, put the special relationship at risk. But also, you have to remember that a huge number of intelligent people who were at the peak of their careers in the 50s and 60s had been students in the 1930s, and pretty much all of them had a hammer and sickle poster on the walls of their student digs. So there were an awful lot of people who were quite sympathetic and who were also probably compromised.
Because the thing is, students in the 30s at Cambridge or Oxford, where they are, it's the idealism. This is why they go off to the Spanish Civil War, to fight Franco, to fight the Nazis. It's seen as a just war. And so therefore it is the thing. But of course they don't know that in the meantime, Stalin's carrying out the purges in Russia that kill millions, overnight. So therefore there is, they do get compromised. But the thing about Blunt, I suppose, is the fact that there's nobody as high up, if you like, in the establishment as he is, who gets compromised, and then to flip it and send stuff over to the Nazis as well.
Yeah, no, I think he played the game in a very peculiar way. He loved a feud. There was something very dark about him. My partner kept on asking, "Is he a psychopath?" And I kind of was reluctant to say that he was, but he is a psychopath, or he was a psychopath. But I think more to the point, he would regard not being a psychopath as just stupid. Why wouldn't you? If you decide that X is the right course of action, even if emotionally you find it really hard to do it, you should just force yourself to do it, whatever the emotional cost is, because your mind should always have priority over your emotions.
So, as a person, because it's very easy to think about in abstracts, but is he a likable fellow? Is he aloof? Is he this sort of Prince of Darkness? I'm not drawing comparisons with Mandelson, but what I'm saying is he this sort of figure? Is he this sort of figure that is?
I think the comparisons are very not.
It was sort of going through my little grey matter. But are we looking at a man who considers himself intellectually superior to those below him? So he thinks he is very much playing this. He can detach himself because everything else is a pawn, and he's like, I'm pumping.
Yeah, the chances of us being able to rock up to him at a drinks party and have a chat with him are pretty slim, because he wouldn't see anything interesting in us. He was a rampant snob. So if you thought you were useful to him, he was incredibly charming. People fell in love with Blunt. He had this sort of almost priestly kind of air to him of someone who weighed everything up incredibly deeply and thought very hard about moral decisions. And an awful lot of people put an awful lot of trust in him.
How did you sort of manage not to be outed before 79? Because, obviously, the Second World War, the Hot War goes into the Cold War. Is he still passing?
Well, he was. So I think this is he secretly confessed, in the very limited way that I've sort of said earlier, just being, giving the Russians secrets about the Nazis in 1964. I think that the British had begun to work it out to quite a considerable degree some years earlier than that. And one of the things that he did that was so clever was the net was closing in. He wrapped up, he got the whole of the rest of the Cambridge spies to defect or have to be in exile, which Cairncross was, but the other three defected. So he was the only one left, and he was then able to negotiate and manipulate a deal which meant that the KGB didn't kill him and MI6 left him alone.
Because if you think about it, all the others end up basically drinking themselves to death. We think about Alan Bates and an Englishman. What was it? An Englishman in Moscow 40 years ago. That brilliant play, and yet he's there. He is this almost revered figure.
So the year that he 1979, the year that he got outed by Thatcher, he starts the year by co-curating with Debo, the Duchess of Devonshire, an exhibition at the Royal Academy called The Treasures of Chatsworth. And you think, well, that sounds like quite a nice job, doesn't it? I bet that was quite fun, organising that and having a rootle around the attics of Chatsworth. I'd like to do that. We'd all like to do that. So he was having a lovely time. And I also don't think he minded being outed. He was a sick man. He didn't have long to live. And frankly, I think it gave him a bit of a chance to take a little bow and go, yeah, here I am. I think he was laughing all the way.
So when you sort of finish this book, Piers, I mean, because we all have this sort of rough idea about, the Cambridge Files, especially Blunt, because he was that high profile, such a shock when we were younger. But, I mean, how easy is it to write this book from somebody who is pretty unlovable? Let's face it, Piers.
Well, it's fascinating. I love the detective work of it. I love the sense that, because this is a story that's never been told. So I really, because all other stories about Blanc, I think, get it wrong. So I quite like that aspect of it. There is that sense of solving a crime. And I've had senior security service people tell me that I'm right, or at least significantly right. They're always a bit cautious. So that aspect. And also, he's kind of amazing. He achieves. I mean, the level at which he's operating is so high and so extraordinary that he's kind of fascinating. Terrible human being, but fascinating.
And also, you've got the great and the good of the art world, the diplomatic world leaders, having bit parts, presumably crossing the stage. I mean, all parts in this story.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he could be argued for being responsible for Beria, the chief of the NKVD and Stalin's security chief, getting killed. That's incredible. I mean, to kind of be able to sort of get hold of these kinds of major events and think, goodness me, that's again a story that's never been told, or a suggestion that's never been made. And I think so. I find all that fascinating.
Where did you?
I hope readers do too.
Yeah, where did you find the information? Were you scurrying about in the attics at Chatsworth House, as you said before, looking behind it?
It's been a while since I've been invited to Chatsworth, but So I think most of it's the National Archives. There's a lot of books out there. There was a big dump of about 5,000 pages of Blunt material at the beginning of last year, which was a hell of a job to go through all. And actually, there were about, I think, a dozen fragments of information that were really useful in that, because they weed it very carefully. What we're allowed to know. But then it's also just really careful analysis of the known facts and then being able to piece it together. I think it was, It's a mixture of things.
What are you hoping that people will take from Master of Spies?
I hope they take that it's a terrific story, and on one level, certainly to younger people who've not really heard of the Cambridge Files, I say I'm like a true crime podcaster who's figured out who the murderer is, if you see what I mean. And so on one level, it is like a kind of true crime thing where you get it's a whodunit. And then how it was covered up. And I also think that how it was covered up has an effect, casts a shadow over things like the Mandelson story today and the way in which so much of what's happening in British society feels like it's happening for someone else's agenda, not for ours.
The book is called Master of Lies. It's by Piers Blofeld, who is speaking today. Piers, if people want to find you on, and by the way, listeners, go to our virtual bookstore, click on the front page or the front cover, which is a picture of the man himself. That is Anthony Blunt, not Piers. And it'll be winging its way to you by a well-known delivery firm. If people want to find you online, Piers, and say lovely things to you, where's the best place to go?
I'm not very much online, but I'm on X, at P. Blofeld.
The book is called Master of Lies. It's by Piers Blofeld. Piers, thank you so much for your time today.
Giles, thanks very much.